Haha! Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a bit of a special live stream today because we've got a special guest. So I'll let him introduce himself to begin with.
Yeah, my name's Councillor Kondakor. I've recently been elected as a county councillor in Warwickshire for the Green Party. I was a county councillor back from 2013 to 2021, and then I lost by 10 votes, and now I've come back again. And it's very exciting times to be a county councillor, but too exciting almost because I'm the only non-reform councillor in the northern half of Warwickshire. So, in my town, there are 13 councillors in the Nuneaton and Bedworth on the county. I'm the only one that's not reform.
Oh, so we'll get into that in a moment. But tell us about, I think, the county council, the area where it is, because I'm not sure how many people will sort of be familiar with the area.
Yeah, so Warwickshire's a two-tier authority at the moment. So we have the county that includes Stratford upon Avon, Warwick District, Rugby over to the east, Nuneaton and Bedworth, which is where I represent, and then North Warwickshire that goes up well up into the boundaries of Staffordshire and Leicestershire. So it's a very tall county, and it basically wraps around Coventry as an upside-down C. So Coventry's in the middle, but it's not part of Warwickshire, which causes us lots of problems. And it's a very diverse county, both economically and politically, etc. Because obviously you've got the Warwick as being a university town, though the university is really in Coventry. You've got Stratford, with its tourism, history and farming. North Warwickshire very much leans towards the ex-coal mines. We had a big coal field go from the top of Coventry across the Nuneaton and Bedworth and then into North Warwickshire. So it's very diverse economically. We have lots of issues across the county, but in Nuneaton and Bedworth, we're relatively highly deprived, particularly on the west side of town. We've got lots of new housing, lots of transport issues, equality issues, etc. And here we have a low life expectancy. The south of the county, very much a higher life expectancy. And house prices are phenomenally different either side of Coventry. So you're talking almost a 2-to-1 house price difference between the very poorest parts of Warwickshire in the north and the sort of leafy Stratford upon Avon.
So you've got a very, very, as you said, a very diverse area really to sort of be in charge of it in many ways. So obviously you've mentioned some of the challenges that you are sort of facing there with the sort of the council. Is there any ones in particular that you are probably the most sort of I say interested in, but what are your sort of main things for your council? What are you hoping to do with your tenure, shall I say?
I've always wanted to improve transport because the big thing we have here is low access to education in the north of the county. The universities to the south of Coventry and in Coventry itself, and very much the educational achievement, the whole opportunities for young people in the Nuneaton means they leave when they are 18 and go to university. They tend not to come back, and then in their 30s and 40s we tend to get population moving back into the Nuneaton from the likes of Coventry. So there's definitely a hole in our population caused by a lot of transport issues. And I'm the only Green up on the county council, but we've got 2 Greens on the borough council. But it's not a particularly green area. We're very much in a minority here. Whereas the south of the county, we have 6 Greens representing the south of the county on the county council, and Warwick District itself is run partly by the Greens and Labour. So very, very diverse. And then in the south of the county, even further, Stratford upon Avon currently has a Lib Dem MP. So I say we've got the whole spectrum of politics, the whole of the UK, but in miniature. So Stratford's like the southwest, we're like the northeast and northwest of the country. It's very, very different. And levelling up, opportunity. We need massive regeneration here. All town centres are suffering, but Nuneaton hasn't done very well at all. And we've had rather inept borough councils run by Labour. So then the Tories got in with a landslide in 2021. They made a total mess of the regeneration project for the town centre. And now the borough council's actually hung between Labour, the Conservatives, and two Greens in the middle. So we have a very, very interesting dynamic. And then on top of all that lot, all local government in Warwickshire is being reorganised. So we're going to be split into two unitaries, one for the north or one for the south, or more likely they'll want to shove it into one ginormous council for the whole of Warwickshire. And as I explained at the beginning, that really doesn't fit with how diverse and large the county is.
Yeah, I want to get onto the government reform on that, because that, I think, is for some councils, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the way that they've put it is more for like depopulation and sort of like population movements. The way, at least I've sort of read it and understand, especially when down south, down in Kent. But again, it may be different for your area. But before we get on to sort of discussing that, you mentioned something about your demographics for your area. So you probably, like most councils, have a lot of, wouldn't be too surprised if your big spend on your council is adult social care. Is that the case?
Absolutely. And of course, it's very expensive to do. We've got an increasing aging population. And in fact, we die earlier up in Nuneaton and Bedworth, but we have more health problems. So it's not like it's a north-south problem. It's all over with different characteristics. And we get the same things in a lot of places, an awful lot of dementia nowadays, with people living longer. Actually, more people are getting into the ages where they suffer from things like dementia, which is obviously very expensive for the care service. We have lots of people with special educational needs in the younger section of the population. There is just so much to spend on. And we've also got a lot of school expansions because of all the new housing. Basically, Coventry's population has been expanded by a big burst of students. Coventry is a young student city now. But that has led to a lot of people moving into Warwickshire. So the migration, particularly into Nuneaton, Rugby, places around Coventry, it is very much people looking for a family home to bring up their children. So we've had the perverse thing of having to build schools in my area, while the schools in Coventry actually merging and struggling with their population. The dynamics just adds to the pressure. And then we don't get any infrastructure. We get one train an hour to Coventry, which is ridiculous for being just 9 miles away.
Yeah, transport infrastructure to me, especially, sort of, I keep on banging on about this, that infrastructure is probably the most important thing, and people underestimate it. I think, having like a proper connected transport system. I mean, there's no reason why places like Coventry shouldn't have trams. I'm from Barnsley, so Sheffield's down the road. We've got Supertram, which is great when it's running. But I think now you're seeing sort of the more regional mayors, which I don't know you've got one yet, or I think that's in the works. I can't remember now.
This is the whole problem with the devolution, because Coventry went in with the West Midlands and various places like Solihull to form a combined authority. Warwickshire is now left out as an orphan. And the reason they want local government reorganisation partly is to actually have the rest of the bits that aren't in combined authorities join combined authorities. But the West Midlands don't want us. We'll just make their combined authority bigger. They're trying to go, I think they call it deeper or whatever. Bizarrely, one of the arguments we had for being two unitaries rather than one is we could then form a combined authority with ourselves, which you can't do as one authority on your own. Yeah. So the whole thing's mad.
Yeah. Let's go into that, because this is we'll get into the reform as well, but this was, for a lot of councils, when we were running the last local election, this was like a major issue for a lot of councillors when they were running, especially when they were talking about campaigns and what they intended to do. From what I can tell, when Reform were running, they weren't even talking about this.
They weren't talking about anything. Their thing was, we're coming in, we're doing a big audit of all the spending, We're going to get rid of all the millions and millions spent on things that actually millions aren't really being spent on. And they just criticised everything the councillors did.
Yep.
Even though they're in the same boat, that there is no money in local government to do all sorts of nice projects because everything goes on adult social care.
Yeah, there's just a big chest somewhere underneath your town hall somewhere that they'll magically discover.
But they hardly campaign. I mean, in some ways they hardly campaigned, and in some ways they worked really hard because it was just selling the message that the whole system's corrupt and we're not the same. But they've got all the same problems and all the now they've actually got the keys to the door and they're inside. They've got exactly the same problems as the people who used to be inside, but they're less competent because they haven't been doing it for more than a couple of weeks. And it's a massive thing. I went to the local government conference and they said local councils provide 800 services. And some of them are done by the borough, some are done by the county, and obviously if you're unitary, you do all of them. But you can get asked about anything and you've got to fund all those different services.
I mean, this is something I'm always interested in to ask sort of councillors. How would you say your interaction is with people in your your patch, should I say? How not for national but locally? What is it like there for people?
It's really good, and I'm a really sort of walk around, cycle around, talk to people person. And I've been here for 25 years living in the ward, and I was born in the town 60 years ago. So very much very local, very talking to people. When I was first elected on the county council, the opponent complained that I was cycling around and he was driving around, and I was talking to all these people as I went around. And because he drove around in a car, my opponent, he could only sort of stop here and then. So we're very embedded. We really understand what's going on with a lot of the issues, and people tell me what's going on. Weddington, where I represent, people ring, social media, everything. Me, my wife, we're always getting calls. And a week and a half ago, we had a massive downpour, lots of rain, various issues around. All the people are telling me all about the problems. We've got missing drainage on the new school and things. So people just instantly interact. We're very busy. We're very visible. And I think that's why we're different, because we don't talk about national politics very much. In fact, a lot of my social media, you wouldn't know I was a Green unless I say Green Nuneaton, because we're talking about things.
I'm a big believer that local politics is infinitely more important than what goes on in Westminster. It is important, but so many people, especially from my local experience, people in my town are very distrustful of any councillor. It's always councillor so and so is corrupt as the day is long, and councillor so and so is on the take. So my sort of political sort of when I see and talk to people about local politics in my area, that's what I tend to get. They are very, very politically disengaged. I mean, the turnout rate for my town was 25% at the last election. So it was very, very, very bad when it comes to turnout in my hometown. So I am very, very worried when it comes to next year's local election, because all our council seats are up for election.
And everything's about turnout, who you get to turn out. I mean, traditionally in politics, you had a list of people who voted last time. You then went and knocked the doors of those people, not everyone, and then you saw how they were going to vote and if they're going to vote for you. And the 30% or 25% that vote were the only people that mattered in traditional politics. And here in Weddington, we usually get about 40% turnout in local elections, which is far, far higher than the sort of 30 odd. And in the town end centre areas, we might be getting 25% turnout. And interesting, what happened in the local election in May was actually Reform got people out to vote who don't normally vote in local elections. It didn't actually change very much the vote of the people who voted for the main parties. They just got another massive wodge of people out who don't normally vote on a set of promises that everything's going to be different. You're going to save vast sums of money, less council tax, and there's going to be less wasted and all sorts of things, which don't actually happen anyway. And it's interesting, like when there's been a couple of by-elections now, not here, but in other places, where Reform have actually had a candidate who stood down and they start having another election after 2 months and they don't vote Reform again because it's all the emperor's got no clothes sort of. Yeah, they really wasn't a revolution. They come in and find millions under the sofa.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing I sort of want to see when a lot of these people go for re-election, or when you see by-elections, that the track record for that isn't very good. So that'll be interesting to see as we go along, I think, maybe.
But there's a difference because that's a different candidate. And I've really noticed we've got 57 councillors, of which 40 were new at this election, well, including myself and one of those who were returning after a while. So that's 38 new councillors, 23 of which are Reform. And some of them will make good councillors. You see them in their social media. Yeah, some of them actually understand they're talking to local communities and they'll be good councillors, not because they're Reform, but because they're who they are and they're interested in their local areas. Some will be mediocre councillors and some just don't understand what councillors do. And they will have calls from residents and they say, why are you calling me? Because they don't understand most of what councillors do when they're not in meetings is casework, advice, signposting. I mean, councillors don't do stuff. Councillors signpost people to the right officers or tell people where things go. We're not supposed to, but we occasionally do a bit of trimming and clearing ditches and things. But basically, most services are provided by council officers or contractors. But a lot of people who become councillors don't understand how much workload there is if you're a good councillor, particularly in these big wards.
That's the thing you've seen. Like I've been keeping an eye on a lot of these Reform councils, and it is just completely missing in action. There was a one I've just covered today in Leicestershire. The 2 people for the vice chair of like the planning committee didn't even turn up, and like most of the Reform people didn't turn up.
But the thing is, it's not uniform. I say there are 23 Reform, though one technically has to be an independent, and they'll be split into thirds. So there'll be the very active third who know what they're doing now. They're getting into the in the middle third, and the third that frankly are just going to twiddle their thumbs for a few months and may not last the 2 years or 1 year or whatever. And we find it. So say you know them because you start doing stuff, you start interacting with the other councillors because you naturally are on committees with them and whatever. And you just see which ones actually want to be there and want to take part. But the big thing I really noticed, and one reason I did say yes to your going on your podcast, is how much on the bigger stuff they're not allowed to have an opinion or not avoid. Yeah. You've had meetings where they've just sat there and they're obviously under order to say nothing and do nothing apart from put their hand up. And that is frightening because you can't convince someone something is a good idea or a bad idea if they're under orders just to follow party whip. And
I think that is the dangerous thing, because I've talked again on a lot of my videos about there is this unit down in London, which is in the Reform office. And that is apparently what is basically giving the marching orders. This is where apparently soon all this policy that they're meant to be telling people about the next couple of months is going to be coming from. It's apparently where Doge, all the volunteers are again based apparently most of the time for the Doge stuff. In fact, that's an interesting question. Have they mentioned anything about the Doge stuff yet?
Oh no, we're well. They've obviously got about 10 councils that want to have a go at this on, and because we're no overall control, I think we're in the too difficult to do first category. And there's a dynamic obviously of having the Conservatives as the kingmakers, which makes us different to everywhere else because we have 22 Reform councillors, one independent who's a pretend reform but not reform, and then 9 Conservatives who sat on their hands to choose that the reform people are in. But they will be protective of a lot of stuff they did, and they won't want to see the dismantling of various projects. And it was interesting in the council meeting last week because we obviously talked about climate change. And, Conservative councillor Farmer, he sees man-made climate change. A decade ago, you went to a council meeting and they'll be discussing it, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, what might happen one day, whatever." Now the county councillors who are farmers see catastrophic impacts on their livelihoods, not because it's hot or because it's wet, because they don't know which it's going to be. It's a chaos.
You talk about the uncertainty of it all. Like, you can't plan if the weather's going to change so drastically from like one week to the next. I mean, just this week we've gone from absolute blazing sunshine to complete downpours to now it's just can't make up its mind what it wants to do. So that is just, especially if you're trying to like keep your crops dry in the hopes to try and harvest them, you just can't plan for it.
So basically the county council, we've got it as a collective. There's lots of intelligent people here, but the block of reform, 22 of them have to vote against carrying on with climate change. Not that we spend a lot on it, but we need to be aware of it, and we're the planning authority for some of the waste things, but also with the flood authority. So with the fire authority, lots of things.
That's another thing that I wanted to ask about, because we have seen, I think, on Leicestershire, and I think another council close to them, reform removed I think it was their flood committee, but I'm not sure you have a flood committee specifically, do you?
No. Flooding is just done by the normal scrutiny committee. But we've had a lot of flooding. I mean, we had flooding a few days ago when we had a downpour just localised into garages and around, and mud running down roads and things. And we have a very good but very small flood team. So there's nothing to cut. We actually need to have a few more people working on flooding, because we have a legacy of some really poorly designed new housing developments, but they got permission a decade ago, and the planning of the drainage of them is just appalling in some cases. So flooding is really important, and we're not going to give up on flooding. We need our fire service to be bigger slightly, because obviously climate change causes parallel incidents. You either get that horrible couple of days we had a few years ago, it was 40 degrees and just everything was catching fire, or you have something like Storm Hank, where we had 2 fire engines out in my ward pumping out the back of a house and trying to save. And of course, these things are happening across Warwickshire. It's not like if you have a torrential storm, it's going to just stay in one particular village or town. We're actually going to have to spend more because of climate change, even if we're not doing anything about reducing it.
I did like that you had, I think you responded to the reform councillor who I think stood up and went, "I'm not a climate denier, but..."
Yeah.
And then he went through all, I think, the normal climate denial stuff. So I did find that somewhat quite amusing when I watched that unfold.
And of course, most of them aren't allowed to talk about it, but he's in the, it's just natural variations been happening for tens of thousands of years. And of course, we have had variations for tens of thousands of years. Slowly, we've come in and out of ice ages or whatever, but we've got changes now that happened in 10 years. Every decade's different to the decade behind. And the usual deniers are, it's the sun getting brighter or whatever. And I'm an engineer. I'm probably not neurodiverse. I really read the science and understand how it all works. And I love, like, I held an inflatable globe up and said, it's not the sun getting brighter. If the sun gets brighter, the equator gets hotter more than the poles. If you've got a greenhouse effect, you heat something that's not radiating heat, and the tops get hotter, more so because they're not radiating like they used to. So you can tell it's man-made from the distribution. But then we've got the other dimension now, that the very top of the atmosphere is cooling. And that's, scientific satellites measure all the different, or these balloons that take up the atmosphere. If the top is cooling, It's not the sun getting warmer. It's the fact the atmosphere is not letting the heat rise, or radiate as it is. I love explaining science. I could have, as I said to the chair, and he laughed, I could have spent hours explaining all climate change. But they're not talking about details.
Yeah, well, let's get to the chair, because I think in that meeting that was kind of interesting for the chair, because he had two moments of two of those votes. Obviously, there was the one to elect the new leader of the council, and of course the approval of the political officers. And both times he was the guy who cast the deciding vote, because you were pretty much tied 23-23, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And I was interested to hear him say, I think it was the first time, he said something on the lines of, "Oh, I'm really disappointed." And I just have to wonder, what do you know anything why he was sort of disappointed in that or anything?
I don't know if they're disappointed that the Conservatives not supporting them on it, or where, because obviously there's all sorts of meetings going in corridors and before things, people coming out of doors. So I don't know whether he thought the Tories were going to back them, but the Tories are playing games and being reckless, allowing them to run the council, but trying to disown themselves from any responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's really, really bizarre, because they're evidently the most destroyed by the reform, really. I mean, if you look at where they went from 47 or 45 councillors down to 9, I mean, the Greens have got 7. We're not much different in size to the Conservative Party now on the county council, and that they're most impacted by reform. Yeah,
and that's what surprised me when I was watching that meeting. I said when I was watching that meeting, I couldn't decide whether either they were just abstaining basically to watch these things go through, just to basically watch the chaos unfold, and they were like, right, we know this is going to go wrong, so they were fine to let this happen, or there had been a deal done where they just said, right, we're just going to abstain. And I can't decide which one it was, but those two seem to me to be pretty accurate. And as you said, there were, as in all, politics, there's always, deals being done in, behind, closed doors, etc. But I wonder what your take is and what you've heard.
We really don't understand them. I mean, obviously there's always issues between the Conservatives and Lib Dems and things, so their choice was reform. So one argument is, that they had two options they didn't like, so they went for neither. But it was very convenient of them to say it's not our fault. And the big difference would be the Lib Dems, the Greens, the Labour. We have between us hundreds of years of experience. I mean, I think Joe Rudolph said he was over 30 years on the county council. So if you add up, if you made 23 people, each of which have got a background. I mean, I've got only 8 years on the county and 12 on the district. But yeah, if you look at how much experience there is amongst that, and they chose the people who are brand new to the job. And the big problem with the county is, it is a big undertaking. It's not like a district. You need 9 or 10 people to make a cabinet up. So if you've got 22 and you need to find 1 for a chair and 9 for a cabinet, that means a really big ask of a very small group. And I mean, some of the stuff, I mean, we had transport and planning portfolio holder, which has been quite another story. Not been there for the last 2 months. But you look at that, and that is an almighty large part of the budget that's not social care and the cabinet member's not been there, and that has stalled a whole lot of transport projects. It's stalled a whole lot of applying for grants, etc. And the only other thing Reform put on our leaflets were potholes.
And they can't even do that.
And that is done by officers, and we are better in Warwickshire than some of our neighbouring councils. potholes is always a massive problem. We don't fix them early enough, so and the fixes are of poor quality, temporary fixes. So there's lots of issues with potholes, but we are not bad by comparison. I mean, when they do league tables of councils, we're right up the top of. I don't know why we should be, because but we are technically high up, and me and my wife do lots of cycling, and you cycle across the county border into Coventry or into Northamptonshire, and you tell you've got to a more potholed roads. But say not having a cabinet member for potholes around for 2 months, it's bizarre. And that
do we know why he's not been there for 2 months, or
probably not. I mean, there's lots of rumours, and I think there's probably genuine reasons why he's not there. So I don't want to criticise people who are ill or got family. The issue is why he was chosen as a cabinet member, and the leader of the council had health issues, and he stood down after a couple of weeks of being in the post. So he had health issues, and he was actually picking up some of the meetings the transport portfolio couldn't make. But he did the right thing in saying, this job is too much of the issues I've got. No one criticised Councillor Howard for standing down, because they could have criticised him for taking the role on, but once you've got the role and you work out, you're not got the health to do it. Standing down is a sensible thing to do.
And now this leads us to the ultimate question. You're the new leader of the council, the youngest in history. Indeed. Thoughts, I suppose?
He's incredibly keen. You can't deny he's not talented and keen, etc. But it's the experience thing. I always like doing analogies. It's to say, if you think of someone flying an airliner, 747, Airbus, whatever, an 18-year-old can fly a massive airliner. It is not a good idea. What you do is you put them in a smaller airplane, you have them as a first officer, they work their way up the rank. So it's not an age thing, it's sort of the fact you haven't actually done the going in steps to get there.
Yeah, they've been pushed into the big pool before they've learned to swim.
And there is things you learn in life which you don't learn in your first day on your first proper job. And a lot of that is, and we had an argument between him and the chief executive over flags. Those sort of things you try to have in private, and you don't leak an email to the Telegraph newspaper about the person who you most rely on to be your colleague in delivering future services.
That's a good sign to a future working relationship.
So I mean, it's those things, and I like having young people on councils.
I agree. I've said this when I said this. I am fine with people that young running to be a councillor. I think that's good. But my whole issue is, why have you made him leader of the council? Like, what are you doing?
That's simple, because he was the keenest one, and the one that fitted was most newsworthy. And you think, well, either he's the best person for the job, in which case, what's the other 22 like? Or he's the person who would get us the most publicity, and which is why you're not choosing the best person. Why you're choosing the person who gives you most? Because this is a job. This is £40,000 a year, almost, roughly. It's responsibility for 5,000 staff, hundreds of millions of pounds of budget. You cover when anyone else is not there. And I don't think we can argue him not being on the cabinet and not having a role with people around him. That's how you learn doing stuff. But to actually have him as the leader so young,
straight.
And I get on with him really well. He's really sort of chatty. I keep having to tell him to stop shaking my hands, because that's he's learned when he meets people to shake your hands, and then he just keeps shaking people's hands continuously because he doesn't then know what to do. It's interesting, but it's going to go wrong. There's a lot of serious stuff happens in councils, particularly as soon as you look after elderly people, young people, disabled people. you run care. There are all sorts of things that go wrong when you do need someone who can have that gravitas. And that.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, he is like the final say on many of those things in many cases.
Yeah, and also all the negotiations with the councils. Yeah, we have to form either a combined authority with ourselves, which is going to be a silly thing to do, split in half and then join up to, or we're going to have a relationship with the West Midlands or Leicestershire or Oxford. Yeah, there are big negotiations to be done between councils and then with ourselves and with government.
Yeah.
And you really want a bit of negotiation experience before you do that bigger.
Or at least knowing about what government reform is going to entail.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be, as you said, interesting times.
Yeah.
For Warwickshire. But there was something else that also happened in the council meeting, because I think it was I saw it, I thought, on the news after. I think it was I can't remember the name of the Lib Dem person who said it, but there was someone from Essex from Reform there as well, apparently.
Yeah.
Do we know why he was there? Was he there to like watch how things went, to like, or was he there to pull strings from the background?
I've got no idea. I mean, they're very coached. They're very much told not to talk to the press. And after the meeting, obviously, he did one interview only with the local radio station, which is a very soft interview. I don't know what was behind or what was agreed. But he didn't take questions from the press. He did his thing standing on the thing, and then we'll send you a written statement. And the press really don't like written statements because they can't ask questions of written statements. They like talking to people. And then the other interesting thing was the pothole. I don't know if you watched a bit about potholes, because apparently in the literature for the election and newspaper interviews and things, there's mentioned 6,500 potholes being outstanding. And then the real figure was 107 or 104, depending when you looked on the database. And that was that information, it seems, comes from Reform headquarters talking to the press. So when the press asks George a question, George doesn't answer the question. He says, "I'll get you a statement," and that comes from Reform headquarters.
Yeah, I think that is the bigger worry, because you are, it's people, your local people that have elected you, not whoever is down in that office down in London. I think that is probably the most concerning thing, because to me it really seems like he was put there because he might be very easy to control. It seems to me that's why it was done.
Yeah, and there is a serious worrying side about it all as well, because you look at what happened in the past with various dictatorial regimes or whatever, and they start really friendly, but it's their internal structures and how whether they're actually run by the membership or whether they're run by someone at the top, and you can start to see people feeling nervous. I went to the local government association. I meet various people, and people tell me things via back channels of things, and you just feel they're not all comfortable with what they're being told to do. And if you watch them vote, there wasn't the enthusiasm about running the council. Amongst all of them, there was quite a few just sort of sitting there, sort of, we've got to do this.
Essentially.
We don't want reform to turn nasty on us if we didn't do the right thing.
Yeah. So the other obviously big vote was the political assistance. I honestly agree with most of the arguments that were sort of being given against voting for it. 150k a year, like unfunded spending. It's a no-brainer. It shouldn't be being spent on political assistance. You've got other things. If you said you could be spending it on. I don't know why it's being spent on that. It seems to be very, very much a waste of money. But also, as I think also was mentioned, they might have someone in mind, but we'll see who they hire, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's going to take them ages to hire someone. But if you work in local government, you know how you have to have a job description, do this and do that. So even if they've got someone in mind, the process will take months. But they've got no idea what their policies are. I don't know if you remember Councillor Bannister saying, "We will tell you what our policies are when we've decided what our policies are," which
pretty
almost
much the same across all of them. It's the same. It's
with
coming. Don't worry, the policy's coming.
90 days into the administration, you should know what your policies are.
Yeah.
As a Green group, we obviously weren't going to be running the council, but we were discussing if we were in coalition to run the council, what our policies were before we got elected.
Exactly. So we knew... It's my frustration about this is why were there no policies? Why didn't they even talk about policies? Because that is really almost in a way what you run on, and there was nothing to do with like local stuff, probably bar the potholes.
Yeah, but if you run on policies, people can disagree with you.
Yeah.
This is the most vanilla campaign that no one can disagree with you because you're going to give them lower council tax, get rid of all the waste, and magically fix all the potholes. As soon as you have policies, I mean, I have lots of policies, Labour have policies. People agree with your policies or people disagree with your policies, but they respect you for having a policy of wanting to do X, Y, or Z, wanting to put more money into. They manage to run policy less, and it's really, really bizarre because you can't argue their policies are wrong if they haven't got any. And the political assistants, I think, were there to really be a scout, get some ideas and just generally, and you can see why one might help them. But the bizarre thing with local government is if they have one, they have to give one to the Conservatives and to the Lib Dems, which is why you, instead of spending 50,000 on giving them a political assistant, you're getting 50,000 on them, 50,000 on the Lib Dems, and 50,000 Conservatives. And I mean, the Conservatives and the Lib Dems have got so many years of experience. They got rid of the political assistants 15 or so years ago.
Yeah, so that was said in the meeting as well.
Because actually councillors wanted to do the research. Councillors, we're actually relatively well paid as councillors compared to borough councillors, but that in that is expected we learn up, and if we're a portfolio holder or we shadow someone, there are allowances for our time to actually do the job. And I do a phenomenal amount of reading, and now I'm one of 7. I can study certain aspects. But that's what councillors do on things like county councils. You become an expert on children or adults or fire, or you pick a subject you're interested in, and amongst your group you should have people who can cover all the different subjects. So what is the political assistant going to do, and how are they going to tear in between the 22 if he's really working as assistant? But it's very, very expensive. I can see it being just a thing that wastes a lot of time and be how's the political assistant going to almost negotiate between the existing officers and the parties and things? And it's going to be funny. And I mean, I loved being a bit of an anarchist. So I was thinking of getting Joe Lycett to apply to be the reform political assistant. But you think, well, it's just, but we've got a more important thing to do than mess around doing those sort of things. We have fire cuts, we have adult social care, we have a bridge to nowhere that's cost us £54 million, which is in the news for the last couple of years, where the county council built a highway bridge over the A46 near Warwick, and they specified the wrong material and it couldn't be built. It just sits there as an abandoned bridge at the moment, which is £54 million worth. So there's lots of things that need sorting out, and that's where we should be putting our effort.
So before we let you go, I've got 2 final questions. So one question, my burning question: the Titanic.
Yeah.
Why did you bring that Titanic model? Because I think that got lost a bit.
Well, I didn't have time to fully utilize the Titanic. I mean, I did the analogy of the watchouts on a ship, etc. But no, it's a thing I'm going to bring to lots of meetings to explain climate change projects that are badly thought out, etc. And I do like having props because You and everyone else remember someone talking if they're waving something around. And there is so much in the Titanic story of just a whole series of things going wrong. If any one of them hadn't gone wrong, a lot of lives would be saved. Even simple things like as the ship was going down, people were opening the portholes at the back to see what was going on. And then as they evacuated, they leave the portholes open so that as the ship started to sink, it took on more water. Loads of things you talk about the Titanic.
Well, I thought it was in reference to, because I think one of the councillors, I think after the first vote took place, someone said, "Oh, just like the captain, you're voting to go down with the ship."
Yeah.
So I thought that was what it was for.
Well, it's in there, and I will remind them about it and things. But I do love stuff. Are you going to ask me about the vote of no confidence next?
Yes, yeah, that was the other thing I was going to because that got ignored. Because I have done sort of constitutional stuff before. I've sat on a board with a constitution, so it's really weird the fact that you proposed the motion and you had a seconder as well, and you just went, I ignored it. It's just like, I don't know if you can do that.
Probably not. I've asked to make sure it goes in the minutes, so it's recorded, as I asked for the vote of no confidence. But in some ways, I like putting them on notice. Things are going to go badly wrong, and particularly with a local government organisation, they have to have a plan submitted to government by the end of November. And if they're not developing that plan, then we can, in September, have a real vote of no confidence. And if they do develop a plan or it goes wrong or whatever, we alternatively can have a vote of no confidence in December. Yeah, we have 22 or 23 councillors out of 57. They will lose a vote of no confidence when the council, or particularly when the Tories stop supporting them.
Yeah, I suppose final question then is predictions. Do you think they'll make it past December? Do you think there'll be a vote? Do you think the vote of no confidence will go through, or do you think a disaster will unfortunately happen and they won't be able to handle it? I suppose
you can't make predictions. You can just tell you what the various scenarios are. One scenario is obviously internal. If any of the 23 decide they, and obviously on Friday they're picking the new cabinet because obviously with George moving up to leader and with Howard or not Councillor Rob Howard's stepping back. I don't know if he'll still be in the cabinet, but they need to at least appoint one or two more people into the cabinet. With a different leader, you might get different. So there's all sorts of things happening that might destabilise their group. So there's things that can happen from within. There is then obviously what the Tories do, what happens with local government reform. So there might be more pressure for change, but it's unstable. But it's unstable, but you can't tell always. My Titanic analogy, you can't tell when the hull will break into two. All you know is there's pressures all over the place, and the amount
when's
of
the critical point
going
to happen?
Yeah. And one of the things we said in the alternative is, and Jonathan, our group leader, says is we could form a caretaker administration. Yeah. If you've got Greens, Lib Dems, Labour, maybe the Conservatives, maybe even Reform in an administration just to get us over local government devolution, it would have actually been more stable. It might have been difficult and would have to do nothing controversial, but at the moment, all the weight is on one side effectively. It's going to fall over. There's nothing to stabilise it. And I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is we know what we're doing, but we have no control over it.
Yeah. So you're on the ship, but you're not at the wheel, so to say.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to keep on talking. And the other thing is we have to get on with the reform councillors in our day-to-day business. Yeah. We have committees that will do planning applications, scrutinise fire, and also, the work of the council carries on. And it's strange because although Reform run the council, all the committees, apart from the cabinet, they're actually outnumbered slightly. So
No, so yeah, thank you very much for coming on today. It's great to sort of have you on, but as always, I echo this. If you know or are a councillor and you watch this and you want to come on and talk about what's going on in your council, that Reform are doing something that maybe isn't getting attention or anything like that, I'm more than happy to sort of have people on and sort of share this platform, because I am very much want, by the time of the next election, or at least the local election, to have people say, well, what happened on these reformer and councils, and basically go, well, you want to know what happened? Here's a list of all these videos of what happened, and here's other councillors saying reform went on and this is how bad it went. So that's at least my hope for the 2026 local elections,
if they happen.
Yeah,
we might not even have them locally. We've got a borough council election by halves in May next year, and it might or might not happen.
Yeah, I know. We've just changed ours, so every single one of our council seats is up for election.
Yeah.
next May. So that'll be fun up in Barnsley. So fun times for me, but yeah, fun times for yourself as well, by the sounds of it. But once again,
make sure everyone in Barnsley votes green.
Yeah. I don't know if that'll happen or not, given our history up here in Barnsley, but we'll see. You never know, as they say. So thank you honestly for very much coming on. It's been an absolute great to have you on. If you ever want to come on again or anything like that about any news or anything updates, let me know and we'll sort something out. I'm more than happy to sort of have you on again. But as always, like I say, yeah, thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to keep on streaming and talk to the audience just before we go. So
press the little red button and disappear.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, bye.
See ya. Bye. Oh, that was good. That was good for that, wasn't it? So a bit more insight on what's going on there from that council. And I think what was the biggest worry for me is what is going to happen with that control, because it seems to me very, very much so that, as he was saying, there's a lot of control going on. And I think that has been very much exerted by the Reform Office. And normally there isn't that much control. Well, there is, but it's not to this extent, shall we say. It's not to the extent where we saw just a couple of weeks ago, I believe, down in Kent, where Nigel Farage visited and then was told to give his marching orders to one of the people in the cabinet, which was interesting, to say the least. But yeah, I'm interested to see what people thought on this. Like I say, good evening to everyone in the chat joining us. So who have we got? Yvonne, Vince, Tim, Billy, Vince again, person impersonator. Say thanks to your guest from us. So yeah, like I say, and thank you once again very, very much to Councillor Kondakor again for coming on. It is this sort of thing I think that people need to know more, honestly, about local government. Something that they need to know on, honestly. So we'll see. I'm especially going to keep an eye on what goes on that council. As you said, the local government reform will be very, very interesting to see, and not only just there, but other these other councils as well. So deadline is November to submit these plans. Kent is going one through as well. We'll see what happens to some of these councils and how much resistance Reform wants to try and put it onto it. Yes, I do read Twitch chat, but you're the only one in Twitch chat. I've got more people on YouTube at the moment. Thank you very much, Leo Sapien. Excellent. Love this. Did not disappoint. Covered all the things that we wanted to hear about. Yep. I'd be very interested as well to see what happens on the Conservatives on that council. You know, I thought it was really strange where they just allowed that to happen. Really strange. But as you know, the councillor said, maybe it was just, you know, they didn't want to vote for either. Didn't want to vote for Lib Dems, didn't want to vote for Reform, so they just abstained, which created a very bizarre situation where maybe they got what they wanted, and now they're just very happy to let the chaos, should we say, go forth on that one. Yep. National government affects your life in the future. Local government affects your immediate day-to-day. Yeah, very, very true, Linz. I always keep on saying this, and I always keep on echoing it. The most important, like your most important vote, it's probably not your national one, but your local one, because local, as you say, there affects your day-to-day life, is your immediate closest contact when it comes to government. And unfortunately, there is a lot of political apathy when it comes to local government. It's not the same everywhere, mind you, but it can be. Can very, very much so be in some places. I am very, very worried about my town at the next one. Like I say, 25% turnout rate. Not good. Not good at all, to be honest. Not good at all. Very interesting. Let's see what happens next. Wonder if the cabinet will change on Friday, or if George will even have other parties in. Well, that will be interesting. I doubt. I don't think they will want other parties in. I don't think they will want other parties involved. Because to me, it really does seem one of the things that Farage is pushing with these reform councils is they are trying to use these as case studies to say, oh, look, this is how good we are. The two primary ones are, of course, Kent and Durham. Those are considered the jewels in the crown of Farage, purely because they've got overall control of those councils. There's not too many other things that other parties can do to stop things. But we'll see. We'll see. And especially, I will be very interested to see what happens with government reform. Of course, I was right about that vote of no confidence. I still think that was undoable. Like I said at the time of the live stream, I would have called the chair out on that. I would have said, hey, look, there's a vote of no confidence being called. You've got a proposer, you've got a seconder. You have to acknowledge that at that point. Yeah, so frustrating when canvassing. Yeah, so many people do not care about local government. It is frustrating beyond belief. Frustrating beyond belief when you talk about local stuff, because people are just so politically apathetic when it comes to it, or you know, they just think, you know, oh, all these people on the council, they're just on the take. Frustrating, but it's not true everywhere. It's not true everywhere. It's worth pointing out, but unfortunately, it's how it is here. It is really frustrating, and I will agree with you on that. So, yeah, so no, that was that. I thought that went quite well. I definitely would love to try and get like a councillor from Kent or Durham on. I think that would be very fun. You know, the places where they are in control, it'd be very, very fun to see if we could get a non-reformer on to talk about what's going on, because I think again they would have a lot of very interesting insights to go on what's going on there. So we'll try maybe reaching out to one of those people down there. But if anyone's got any suggestions on people we could reach out to, that would be very interesting. I'd suggest a large majority of councils are bound by a code of conduct or ethics of behaviour. but don't know. Aussie takeover here. Yeah, they are. Our councils are the same. There is a code of conduct, but it's weird now because Reform are in control of some of these committees, especially on Durham. We talked about the situation in Durham where Darren Grimes is trying to change, or at least put freedom of speech into the council code of conduct, and he's trying to add like European Court of Human Rights in there as well, which is like, well, hold on, don't you want to leave the European Court of Human Rights? Have you asked Nigel Farage? Oh no, Nigel Farage would never lower himself. Nigel Farage would never lower himself to being on a YouTube channel. Never in a month of Sundays. Never in a month of Sundays. So that's an impossible ask. Very, very, very much impossible ask on that one. But I honestly don't know what questions I would ask him. It would be, I think, very, very difficult. Very, very difficult indeed to ask like questions of Nigel Farage, because you'd have to sort of prepare them. You'd have to really think about what questions you're going to ask. And there's always the possibility that you could walk. Like you wouldn't want to start out like throwing, like lobbing grenades at the start. You'd have to maybe start with like a couple of light ones to begin with and then go heavier, you know? But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, he visits the Midlands occasionally. Again, occasionally. Yeah, Nigel Farage will never go anywhere he's actually held account. Yeah, very true. What's this? I'd ask about Baltops 22 and how it ties to Nord Stream 2. I have no idea. I have no idea about that. You've probably got more idea than me. I used to know what Nord Stream 2 is. But I have no idea about that. So yeah, that was our interview with the local councillor, Councillor Kondakor. And like I say, thank you once again for him to coming on. Like I say, thank you very much for his time. I'd be very, very interested to see if things start going a bit interesting more in the future. A bit weird to see if he's interested up for the chat, but we'll see. We'll see what happens down there. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, total non sequitur. Yeah, Tommy 10 names being a naughty boy. Would not be surprised. Would not be surprised if yeah, would not be surprised if he's he has done a runner. Be very interesting to see what happens on that. We'll have to see what happens when the CCTV gets released on that. Well, thank you very much. You're my go-to source for Reform Council news. Well, like I say, as I said there again, the whole point now of what I want to do is whenever something happens, and quite frankly, I am actually shocked that I can do so much content on like Reform councillors and just how like bad and incompetent and just the nonsense that they get involved in. I am very generally shocked that I can do that amount of content. I am very, very much shocked because when I started doing it, I thought maybe 1 or 2 a week, maybe 1 or 2 a week when it comes to it. But no, I am shocked that I have never really struggled for content when it comes to covering them. I am very, very shocked when it comes to that. So, like I say, thank you very much for watching. And like I say, thank you for all your guys' support. Please do, of course, press the like, share, and like and share button. Like I say, share it around to as many people as you can. So I want more people to see these interviews. just see just what a mess like reform are getting up to, especially as was mentioned there, when like the local government reform comes in. That could that seems like everything could go a bit wrong with them in charge. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. And like I say, we'll see you all next time.